All right, my name is Ryan, and I am happy to be here today. Hopefully, your first day at Symposium this year was good, and the second day will be good as well. I'm excited, to share with you a little bit. This is the technical track, and we're talking about the process that LifeRay, our web team, went through to upgrade our website. So we recently upgraded and redesigned our website, and I wanted to share some of the stuff that we learned with you guys, try to give some pointers, some tips, some things to think about, questions to ask as you in your companies or doing your websites, your projects, whatever it is, so you have some place to start, because there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's an important thing to do, and so trying to share some of that knowledge that we gained. So, who am I? As I said, my name is Ryan Schuler. I work out of the Los Angeles office for LifeRay, and I work on our web team. So this is our web team, the 7 of us that put up almost everything that goes online for LifeRay, which is a lot of different things. A lot of times when I tell people about the web team, they think, oh, so you make web content and put it on the internet. That's not that hard, right? But there's a lot more that goes into it than that. We do all sorts of things, anything from obviously the main website and all the new pages, product pages, DXP pages that go up. We also do all of the microsites for all of the events that happen around the world. So, for example, the North America Symposium or DevCon in Germany, solutions forums, and even this website for this event. So all those things, along with anything else that other departments want up, anything that goes online publicly, usually we have our hand in, which makes it very interesting to keep things clean, to keep things consistent, and to do something as big as trying to upgrade or redesign all of that stuff. So, why am I here? Here to tell you a little bit about our process of taking, this is what our old site used to look like, lots of navigation, lots of things going on all over the place, and trying to redesign and upgrade at the same time. So our new website looks like this if you've been to our homepage recently, and trying to update the look and the feel, which is part of the redesign, and then also upgrading versions of LifeRay for more features, which is part of the upgrade. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about the process of evaluating, of planning, and then of migrating our data or actually executing an upgrade and a redesign, all of which are super important for the process and for your companies as you're trying to have relevant websites, you're trying to reach your customers, or if you're using LifeRay internally, how to effectively communicate to your employees, whatever it is that your website's doing, evaluating these things and staying up to date is vitally important, especially as we're talking about all of the digital experience and the user experience that it goes into websites. It's very important to stay up to date. So we're starting with evaluate. How do you know if you need to redesign or if you need to upgrade? Those are two different things, but oftentimes they can be linked. For us, we decided to do them both at the same time, which may or may not have been, well, it was a lot of work. I think it was a good choice because you're redoing a lot of things. But some questions first that we came across, first starting with, should you redesign? So we want to know, we asked ourselves a lot of things. Should we redesign? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? Because it's a lot of work to evaluate your whole site, where it's at, get a feel for all of the pages, all of the content, all of the design, everything that's going on in your site, and then figure out, okay, do we need to rework this? So some questions that we came up with is, does our site feel dated? Are users lost or confused when they get our site? How is it that they navigate? Are things consistent across the site? Has our site expanded from when it was originally created? A lot of times you're not the one that created the original site. For example, I came onto the web team and we inherited this website from the last people that were using it, and we didn't have control over all of the architecture and all of the design and all those things. So a lot of times you need to take the time to sit down and evaluate, all right, does our site need to be updated? Lots of questions that you can ask yourself. Basically, it comes down to you're going to want to redesign if you have a poor UX across your site, whether that's navigating, whether that's interactions that your users are using, or if the form and the function, which are parts of UX, but so if your site looks like it needs to be updated, if it looks very out of date, or it doesn't work very well. Like maybe you have metrics that say your users are dropping off on certain pages, or maybe it's just your employees complaining it takes 10 clicks to get where they want to go. Those kind of things are all reasons that maybe we should redesign our site and reevaluate how it's working, which is super important. The second question is, should you upgrade? So this is talking about jumping versions of LifeRay. Things like, do you have a lot of custom portlets and custom features that you keep having to build? Are there features that you're hearing about maybe in the symposium or in newer versions of LifeRay that you guys want to implement or will make your processes easier? Is it hard to find developers to develop in certain languages or certain things? LifeRay can be specific sometimes, which is helpful, but can be also hard sometimes. So upgrading versions gives more flexibility, more features, lots of different things. There can be apps that you want to use. You can get more stability. You could get more features. All of those things are reasons why upgrading could even be that your current support license is running out. All of those things are reasons why you might want to upgrade. And it's generally good to get a better product, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. So these questions are valid to ask and to decide if you should be upgrading right now and when is the right time to do that. So the pros and cons of upgrading that we found. One, like I said, new features. There's lots of cool new things that come out with each version of LifeRay, and that's very beneficial to your work and how you work into your websites. So that can make your company, both internally or for your users, much more effective by using things such as audience targeting or new ADTs is one thing that we found is very helpful for our process and workflow. All those things are beneficial in upgrades and that you can get from them. Also just improvements in the product, more stability, things like that. But it's always going to cost both cost in time, cost in money, and there's also the change. The people in your organization probably know how to use your website right now, and changing is always hard. But it can, in the long term, it will help a lot. So there's always pros and cons, but we found that we at LifeRay needed, asking those questions, we needed to redesign and upgrade. So that's what we did. So in our process, our goals for redesigning and upgrade included, we wanted to make our site feel more modern, feel more up-to-date, kind of refresh the look to meet kind of what the industry standard was now and what people see and expect when they go to websites, especially since we're a tech company. It would be weird if our website still looked like it was from the 90s when we're trying to sell software to build websites. So we need to update that feel, and we need to make sure that, our users are pleased with our website. We also wanted better UI and UX, so we wanted people to be able to get where they wanted to on our site and not have so much going on that they can't figure out what's going on. So we had a lot of content, we had a lot of navigation, all these things which maybe are useful for some people or people just got used to it. We wanted to make sure that our UX was well thought out and good as we're moving forward. We also wanted consistency. An important part of having a website is elements that are consistent, that look nice, and the user knows what to expect. As they go from one page to another, they should know, oh, this design pattern means I should click on this, or our buttons are all the same, those kind of things. Over time, our site had kind of evolved so that there was different parts of our site that weren't consistent, so we wanted to make those more consistent. And then we also wanted to streamline content. We had a lot of content, a lot of pages. You'll see some slides later of our site map, and it was very daunting, and not just for us, but for our users as well. So trying to pare down content and be able to focus, because people don't read a lot of stuff on the web anymore. They just kind of skim, so we should give them the content that they want and in the places that they want. And then for upgrading, our goals were we wanted the additional features. We wanted the fixes and the support that came through it. Instead of us having to do patches and hot fixes every time we found a bug that was affecting us, upgrading a version, all those things are built in. And we also just wanted more stability and progress in the long term. As we continue to grow and want more features, we're going to have to be on the updated and the newest version of LifeRay. So those were our goals moving forward. So once we set those, the next step was to plan. So that included a lot of things, but for today, I'll talk about three main areas, those being navigation, the look and the feel, and then the infrastructure, all of which were big tasks, but definitely worth it and paid off in the end. So, first one is navigation. So our goals in navigation were to simplify our navigation. It was, as you'll see in a little bit, you could go anywhere you wanted on the site from anywhere, which sounds nice sometimes, but then there's a lot of information that's very overwhelming. So we wanted to simplify so that we could direct our users where they would want to go and where we wanted them to go. So we can kind of know, okay, if a user is going in this flow in our site, we want to continue them down that path and not give them all these options to go everywhere else and distract them. And then we also wanted to be able to track where they're going and what they're doing. And by structuring our site well and the navigation, we can do that. So basically, we simplified our navigation code, which was a lot more crazy, into something like these 30 lines or these 2 macros that we're using that basically give you a very simple navigation. Nothing revolutionary or complex here, but basically we're simplifying. Instead of having navigation with drop-downs like this, so for example, we had these nav items, and then these had drop-downs, and these had drop-downs, and then we had a side navigation, and then we could have other navigation in other places. There was a lot of things that you could do, but we decided that we didn't want all of those options anymore. We wanted to still give people the ability to go where they want to go, but to simplify it. So now we have our nav here. We figured out where our users are going and where they're coming from, and gave them just 4 high-level options. And then once you get into one of these options, for example, like products, then you have 3 next options, right? You have the sub-pages of that, and if you go into here, you might get a few more sub-pages, but it's much more simple and much easier for the user kind of, okay, I only have a few options, this is where I'm going, and you can follow that path. So taking the time to think through where are our users trying to get to, where do we want them to go, and then being able to flow them in that direction was very helpful and is a big part of planning for what we were doing. So the next step, next thing we're looking at is the look and feel, trying to update, modernize what the UX is of our site. So that includes styling and different things. We had design come up with new mock-ups of the whole feel of it, trying to make things more consistent. So that started with just banners and menus. We added a side menu, which we had a drop-down before. As you can see, this was our initial, or before we upgraded, this is what it looked like. We had lots of options in the side nav, lots of drop-downs. And now, as most of you have seen, most apps and websites have sidebars. So doing things like that make the experience more, it's more what the user expects, and they also know where to find it. People know now on the web that if you click on the hamburger menu, then you're going to open up a side menu and it has more information if you can't find what you need right now. And it also looks just a lot cleaner and nicer. We wanted to make things consistent. Before we had our white papers, just lists kind of like this with icons. This was the only place on our site that looked like anything like this, and it didn't look very nice. So we changed that feel to be more of the tile feel so that you have more logos, more things that draw the user in, and then also when you click on it, you can get the details. We also set the standard of all of our filters across the site like this. So anywhere you see any filters, they're going to look like this so that the user knows, okay, this is something that I can filter, and this is what it looks like as I'm going across. So those kind of things help to update the look and the feel to make the site consistent and more usable for our users. And then the other big thing that we were planning is our infrastructure. So that's how our site pages were set up. That's how our instances and our clusters were set up. All of those things had kind of grown over time and kind of, as anything, were needed to be reevaluated. So we wanted to make sure that our instances and our setup was very upgradable so that we could now and in the future easily upgrade versions. We could easily add new features. We'd be able to maintain things. We wanted to be independent from other departments and other things in LifeRay. So the way that we were working before, we had one instance of LifeRay, and it contained everything that you would want. So it had the marketing sites on it, it had the training sites on it, it had our support ticketing system on it, It had the community for Liferay on it. All of these things, which are great, and Liferay could handle it. But as our company grows, those things are managed by different people and have different custom things going into them. And it gets really out of hand to have to sync deployment processes. If somebody on the marketplace team breaks some code, then it breaks it for everybody. So we were trying to be more modular with our infrastructure, not just developing our portlets, but how we're managing our websites so that we can have different instances of Liferay, and they can work together, and you can, using LDAP and things, they can sync well. But our instance would be independent so that we could have our own instance for marketing, and we could upgrade it very rapidly. It'd be very lightweight because most of it is a public-facing website. But then our customer support, they have their own instance, and they can upgrade at their own rate and add things at their own rate. And we're not trying to butt heads to merge code, and we're not trying to butt heads to get things to work. So that was quite a process of figuring out, okay, everything is all intertwined, so how do we pull it out? But it's definitely worth it because now we have our own instance that we can upgrade rapidly and add features to rapidly and test and deploy on our own cycle. All of those things are very beneficial for us. So, as I was saying, we used to have one instance of Liferay that had everything in it, and then it was a 4-node cluster. So we had HA proxy that would then divvy up all the different traffic to the different nodes. But so what we decided to do instead is we left this cluster with all the old things, but we added another 2-node cluster for our marketing site only, so that we could have all of the marketing stuff, a smaller, lightweight version of Liferay that still interacts and can still talk to this cluster. But then HA proxy knows, okay, we want things of normal URLs and marketing things to go to this cluster, but we want community stuff to go to this cluster, which takes some setting up initially, but is definitely worth it for the flexibility that we have now and the ability to be more agile in our development. So this was our sitemap, most of our sitemap originally, which was just crazy. You can see sometimes it gets 4, 5, 6 levels deep. I'm sure you have crazy sitemaps too, hopefully not. This was not necessarily something that we designed, it was kind of inherited. And sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes you need to have huge sitemaps, and that's okay. But not all of these things were even things that we knew what they were, right? There's some person on the web team years ago created this page, we don't know if it's who uses it, those kind of things. So we went through a lot of that stuff and cleaned it up, but also because we split it off, a lot of these pages, I think most of these are community pages. So those are now still on the other instance, but we now have our marketing instances much cleaner. We intentionally made it shallow, trying to not go too deep in nesting because people actually don't go that deep into your site usually. So trying to simplify content and keep your sitemap shallower is better for everyone. It's better for maintaining, and it's better for your users to actually get to the pages that you want them to see. So that was one of the huge benefits of us splitting off and upgrading that instance. So into some of the details of the actual migration and the execution of it. Talk just a little bit. I can't talk about everything, obviously. If you have questions after, would love to talk to you. But the 3 main points that I want to talk about are how we upgraded some of our code, kind of the options that you have when upgrading your portlets and your code, and then the actual migration of data, some of the options you have for that, and then some cautions about SEO and how it'll affect kind of your search presence online if it's a public-facing site, and the importances of that. So first off, the migration of code. There are 3 options. There might be a few more, but mainly 3 options of what you can do with any given portlet or your code as you're upgrading. You can copy-paste and then kind of update the APIs as you need. So basically keep the same portlet and then kind of adapt it to whatever changes have happened in Liferay in that version. You can replace that portlet with some Liferay features. Sometimes that doesn't always work, but when it does, it's very beneficial. And then you can also rewrite it completely, which is a lot of work, and no one likes to rewrite old portlets. But sometimes it is good and necessary to rewrite things based off of new standards. For example, OSGI is what started in 6.2 and now in DXP is is the direction we're going. So eventually things will probably need to be rewritten into OSGI if you want them to work as effectively and get all the benefits of that. So maybe you do that now, maybe you do that later, but it's one of the options. So we actually used all three of these options in different things because it's a case by case for whatever you're upgrading. Some examples, we have a HubSpot portlet. So this is just it's mainly a portlet. HubSpot is our marketing automation tool that we use. It's a third-party kind of emailing marketing software. And we wrote a portlet to integrate the APIs so that we could do something like put forms on our site that submit to HubSpot, and then we can track all of that stuff. Marketing can send all their emails. But so we have a portlet that integrates that with Liferay. And that portlet was relatively unique. It wasn't that integrated into Liferay's core. So all we had to do basically was copy that over to our new instance and maybe update a few of the APIs that changed. But it was basically a copy update portlet, and that was very simple to do. Another thing that we ran into, we had a side navigation portlet. So that was a portlet that had existed for a while just to kind of do a specific side navigation for our site. It looks kind of like this if you saw in some of the other ones. It's something that newer versions of Liferay just include out of box. And they even have new things like ADTs that you can customize that just from the front end, so you don't even need the code. So as we were upgrading, we didn't even need this portlet anymore. So we just got rid of it and then replaced it with an application display template, which was very useful and much cleaner for us to maintain, for our deployment process, and then also for future upgrades, much easier for us to use. And then another portlet that we have is our events portlet. So this one is one that we decided to kind of rewrite more of the code for. So as we were upgrading, we have our event sites with lots of different events that you can go to, and we were expanding that portlet, doing that. So we decided to take this portlet and to upgrade it completely and kind of rewrite the code. We copied some of the code, but this is one that we were like, it's not worth just upgrading. It's a little too integrated, too complex. So we're going to rewrite this one. And we didn't do it all in the beginning. Like we did it in chunks and are still continuing to do that. But that code is completely rewritten and reworked, and that is good because it's a lot cleaner. It's going to be a lot more effective in the long term. Great. So then migrating and upgrading your data. There's a couple options for that as well. You can do one, most typical is an in-place upgrade. So you take your database and you run the normal script on it, or in earlier versions of Liferay, you could just open your database with the newer version of Tomcat or the newer version of Liferay, and it would upgrade your database for you. Now you have to run a script, but it's not super difficult. So you run through that in-place upgrade, and it's going to update all of your data for you. However, it's depending on how clean your custom portlets are and those things, it can be a pain to make sure that the data works well and that everything is clean. So that doesn't always make the most sense. And for us, we had a lot of data that we didn't want anymore and things that were structured poorly or we didn't need. So we actually didn't do an in-place upgrade this last time. We did all new. So we basically replicated the data that we needed mainly for site pages and things. So that would look like our events. We didn't copy over or upgrade our database tables for all of our existing events. We just recreated them because they changed so much structurally. But then you can also do a hybrid version, which is what we did for a lot of our data as well. And so that looks like something like press releases. We changed the templates and how they worked, but we took all of the old press releases. We didn't want to copy paste all of the old press releases and republish them. So we wrote scripts that would take this field and then put this table in the database and transfer it to this table in the database. Those kind of things give you the benefits of writing it all new and make it clean, but they still make it so you don't have to manually do everything, which is great. So yeah, there's lots of things to upgrade, both your code and your data, those things, and it's important to do and to do it well. one thing that you don't always think of when you're upgrading, but our marketing department was very adamant about, is that our SEO wasn't going to take a hit as we were doing this, mainly with our changing the site pages, changing the structure, and updating our site and moving to a different instance. We wanted to make sure our SEO didn't drop and that people could still find the pages that they needed to. So we went to lengths of being cautious about three main things: 404s, our status codes, and our subdomains. So 404s is obvious. As you're changing URLs, you just want to make sure that you have redirects for your pages, because when Google knows and remembers where your pages are and someone clicks on it and it doesn't exist, that's a very bad user experience. And eventually Google will realize it, and your site will begin to drop. So you want to make sure that all of the pages that you are changing are still clean and still working. Status codes is similar to that. You want to make sure that a page that you've redirected is correctly a 301 or a 302, all of those things. It might not be as obvious at first because, hey, look, the page works, but eventually Google tracks, like, is this a permanent redirect? Is it a temporary redirect? Those things are important for your SEO. So you want to make sure to research, okay, where is this page? Where would we want these people to go if they hit this page? Sometimes it's okay if the page is supposed to be dead for it to be a 404, but you want to make sure that the codes are correct on all of your pages. And then another big thing we had to talk through is subdomains. As we split off our instance, our community site went to a different subdomain. So we wanted to make sure that because of our traffic, that our analytics and everything was set up so that Google knew these are still the same site, and that our marketing site wouldn't plummet because we split off to different instances. So I am almost out of time, so I don't want to spend too much time on that one. But yeah, basically we wrote lots of Apache rewrites and different things. Actually, we have redirects in different places, in HA proxy and in Apache and in Liferay, all to make sure that our pages are handled correctly and that everything, people can find what they want to find, and that people can find us when they Google things. So that is mainly what I have. Do we have time for questions?
Hello, Ryan.
Hi.
I would like to know, you mentioned that you build custom portlets for the Liferay website. Mm-hmm. And I would like to know if you did that back-end, front-end, like you said you're a front-end developer. So how did it work for you, the back-end and the front-end separation teams?
Mm-hmm. I am technically a front-end developer, but I've been doing more back-end stuff, mainly because they're like, all right, build this. And they're like, well, that's back-end. So you kind of figure it out as you go. Our team lead is more back-end, so we do have people on our team that can do both front and back-end code. So obviously our portlets, we try to keep them simple, though, for the back-end, because most of the things that we need for a marketing site are relatively simple, kind of just storing data, maybe a little bit of logic. So we'll make the base portlet and make it well, and then currently what we've been doing is making portlets and then implementing ADTs, the application display template, because then more of our front-end people can actually handle the look and the feel. So all of the back end is solid and works well and is efficient, but then we can do the front end, and if design decides to change it completely, we don't have to go through all the code and do all of the JSPs. It's all in the ADT and more of a front-end language. So we try to merge them that way by doing back-end when we need to, but keeping it clean and simple, and then allowing ADTs and things to handle the front end. So,
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.